What I'd like to ask each person, if you're willing, what were the biggies for you today?
I remember before going into lab animal when I briefly worked in private practice, and there were days where multiple euthanasias would come in one day. And being so young at that time, I didn't recognize that it was okay to not be okay with that, to allow myself to go through this grieving process. And I was fighting the grieving, like, what's wrong with me? I'm a veterinarian. I'm supposed to be, this is part of the job. This is what I took on, being a vet, and I'm supposed to be able to handle this. I didn't have the maturity and the knowledge that I'm starting to gain now about what death really is and how it affects us, and that it's okay to embrace the grieving. One of the most important things I learned today from being in this workshop is that it's a very sacred experience. And I think that if more veterinarians could come into that understanding and have this knowledge, that it would really help them a lot.
I've been able to gather some tools to help facilitate clients when they're making these difficult decisions, most specifically like tuning in and helping them access that internal voice of knowing when it's the right time, and ways to kind of get them to that place where they can make that decision. I have some great tools and things that I'm going to bring into that, and some boundaries to establish with going back to practice.
I really related because I also have a cat with small cell lymphoma and kidney disease, like the first video. And I'm really trying to go through that with myself now and prepare myself for my cat's loss, because I know that it's coming up, but I know when. And I think before this and kind of getting my cat, I had a really unhealthy relationship with death and loss, and I had a lot of negative feelings surrounding it because it was painful and hurtful and I didn't understand it. And this has really allowed me to be a little bit more open-minded and dig a little bit deeper into those relationships. The more that I prepare for it, more of a more beneficial process it can be, I guess. And I really thank you for that and everyone for being here.
There are no right or wrong answers, and to be with that. And I think self-acceptance is such an enormous part of the whole process.
After today, I'm much better prepared, because I thought at that point, what if this is it? What if this is it? And I didn't know how to be really around that. And so this has been extraordinarily helpful, so that hopefully many years from now, I'll retain all of this, and Barney and I will have that conversation.
This, I think, has really helped in clarifying, how I'm going to be in touch with him and us and what we do when the time comes. And as you may notice, I am a Beatles fan. One of the things they always communicated was that all you need is love. And I think Liz frames this perfectly in "Let love lead and peace follows."
What was especially helpful for me today is that I feel really blessed that I have not had the experience of having to have one of my animals die in my arms without my choice and your help. It's been a decision that I've been able to make, as opposed to somebody going into convulsions or what have you. And as I'm listening to these stories, I'm thinking, I don't know that I can handle that. I know that I can, but today was a lesson on how you do it. So thank you for that reminder and lesson and guidance.
The whole thing about listening, meditating and listening, and then trusting and taking action, I find those three things were the most profound for me, about trusting that inner guidance.
Really, I've been living in anticipatory grief, I think, a large percentage of the time for years. And one of the practices I want to take away from today is just to be present with him on a daily basis and just enjoy each and every moment I have with him and not live in a state of fear, because it's been hard for a long time. So thank you. I
want to thank you so much, Liz. This has been outstanding. It helps pull a lot of things together for me personally. I especially like the comments about birthing into death. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I feel like that, but the thought of birthing into it adds a whole dimension of wholeness perspective for me. And then, of course, it's always a reminder of presence with all me in everything. And I thank you.
It's been an opportunity for me not only to learn from you again, but also to just make space to be with Toast again. I'm with him every single day, don't get me wrong, and I've done a lot of grieving, but I think I haven't been as good as I would have liked about purposefully making time for that versus just being taken over by it. And so this has really given me the space to do that in a lot of ways, and even planning to come here today has been kind of helping me to be processing in preparation and that sort of thing.
I came away with pages and pages of notes and things to think about, and I feel much better equipped after today. And for that, I thank you. And for listening to everybody's stories.
You have been there for our dogs, and you were there for my mom and for all of us. But one of the things I wrote down, and I don't even remember who said it, was all the pain is just a measure of all the love. Yeah. And that's my big star. I got the big star next to that one.
But it is actually knowing how to let go that really is what you take away. You get a chance to do it again, maybe with another animal, but at least you're a little bit better prepared, and you got helped by Liz Fernandez along the way.
It's been a beautiful day. How often can we say that about talking about something that is in our culture seen as so negative, like you've talked about, and seen as, an ending and a hard thing. And I'm really grateful for having taken the time to spend with you today. And I'm so grateful for the space you've created here.
There's 3 things that we need. We need a healthy relationship with death, a healthy relationship with suffering, and a healthy relationship with our own inner voice. If somebody tells you that you have to climb, in your life you're going to have to climb a mountain, you're going to have to be able to climb this mountain, and sometime in the next 1 to 10 years. When do you start training and preparing to climb that mountain? The sooner you prepare, the easier it's going to be, the more confident you're going to feel. If you just go, well, yeah, that's something I don't have to worry about yet, and then you get a knock on the door and they say, it's time to go climb that mountain, you're going to be freaked out. It's not going to be pleasant at all. It's going to be very challenging, and there's no preparation there. And as a society, I think that's what we do with death. We just push it away, we deny it, we don't want to talk about it. And that's totally understandable. And I would also suggest to everybody that that is part of the reason that we have so much stress and trauma around death. It's not easy. It can be devastating. And yet, we're all going to have to go through it. My goal is that we can all find that peace with the decisions that we make and with whatever has actually unfolded. The guilt is real too, and that needs to be embraced. Yeah, again, it comes back to know better, do better. And the remedy for guilt is forgiveness. And sometimes I really think that our pets give us an opportunity to practice that. If nothing else, even if the decision that we made is one that we would never make again, and I've made those decisions in the past, the only way to make sense of them or live with them is forgiveness. And so I invite you to, if that resonates, if that's something that you feel guilty about, or you feel that sense of, guilt, and then really explore what forgiveness looks like for yourself. If the client makes the decision and is invested in that decision and feels it as the right decision, because it's only right in the moment. There's no objective right or wrong. They're letting love lead. They're making the decision, and it's the one that needs to be made. And Donna, as far as other people, the only thing you can do is, say thank you. I understand your position. And my body, every soul, every cell in my body is telling me that this is what I need to do right now. I want to talk about suffering. So the most common comment I get is, I don't want my pet to suffer. And that's, we can all agree on that, right? Nobody wants them to suffer. Only there's a conundrum within that. And the question is, what is suffering? As much as we don't want to suffer, and as much as we often resist suffering, sometimes we actually choose it. And why? What makes us choose that? Do you think it's possible that sometimes our pets are willing to choose to suffer to be here, suffer some so they can be here? So can you imagine that death is actually happening in each and every moment? So every time we inhale, that's a birth of a breath, and the exhale is the death of the breath. That it's something that it's so close to you all the time. These little tiny deaths. And we become familiar and recognize them for what they are. And then see what happens. Notice what happens over time as you do that. It's easy not to do it because we're culturally programmed not to do it. We're culturally programmed to push it away and to make sure that we don't say anything about it. As a child, nobody talks to you about death because God forbid. So life is birth and death. And what I like to call it is the form and the formlessness, right? When someone's died, a pet has died, there's this emptiness. And especially when it's first happened, there's an emptiness that's filled with a huge amount of sadness and loss and grief. And there's no way around that. And in no way will I ever suggest that you get over that.
Nope.
Because you don't really get over it. You simply embody it in a way that allows you to move forward. One of the things that I like to talk about is birthing into death. Because it is a birth. And it can be challenging and difficult, just like a birth into life or into form. But it's still, quite powerful. So when we're dealing with helping our pets through this end-of-life journey, it can get difficult. and challenging. And there are certain things that we just have to face, and they're not fun. And I would like to suggest that there's another way, a way that we can make space and let all of that unfold, let those feelings be there. And that is by remembering that it's whatever's showing up for you emotionally, whether it's tears or frustration or anger, it honestly is just how love is showing up in that moment. Because this journey is about a journey of love in form, and then of love that moves to the formless. And so if we can find some place in our psyche to remember that whatever is happening is how love is showing up. So just remember that phrase. This is how love is showing up right now. Then there's room to remember, oh, it's love. And if I'm feeling really sad or devastated, that's how love is showing up. And if that becomes a little too overwhelming, then we can use the very special word and ask ourselves another question. This is how love is showing up right now. And how else does love show up in this relationship, in this loving relationship with my pet? How else can it show up? How else has love shown up? The other day I had a client who was talking to me about this little baby bird that she found on the ground on a walk that she was taking. And it was clearly injured, and she took it home. She tried to get it warm and give it a little bit of sugar water and just do what she could to try and save this little bird. And she knew that it was unlikely, but she was willing to try. So fast forward 10 or 15 minutes, and the baby bird died. And she was struck by how devastated she felt by this whole scenario. She tried, desperately and ardently to save this little bird, and she wasn't able to. And she was just distraught about it. She felt bad about it. She felt, described how, this poor little baby bird was suffering and she couldn't help it, and she felt so helpless and powerless. And this was just kind of grabbing her in a way that she was rather unexpected. And so she reached out to me, and I said, first I said, you did what you could, and you did help. And she didn't really look at it that way. She looked at it as kind of not being able to help. And yet she was there with love and with kindness and with a compassionate heart. And that went out into the universe. Those were the energies that little baby bird had the opportunity to experience with her, regardless of whether it stayed in this physical form or not. And I think we forget how powerful that is. That's love. That's the holding that love does, whether or not there's a physical healing or not. And we shortchange ourselves and don't give ourselves credit, and aren't forgiving and gentle with ourselves oftentimes when we offer this amazing amount of love and compassion to another being. So as generous as she was with her love for this little bird, I invite her to be that generous with herself. And remember the story that she was helpful. The story that she couldn't help and that she wasn't able to, she felt powerless, is certainly a story that has truth in it. And yet, if that's the only story that she tells, again, she's shortchanging herself and the universe for not celebrating the love that she shared. So we all are going to tell stories of loss, and we're all going to have stories of loss and of pain and of powerlessness and of what we weren't able to do. And I simply invite you to make space and remember that along with those stories are stories of love and compassion and caring that are at least, if not more, important. They certainly are more helpful for us to remember as we go forward, and we have that to hold on to as something to remember that that's who we are, and that's how we expressed ourselves, and that's what we shared with another. Thank you.